what it shows us is that we're an industry that is built on buyer leads, mortgage application opportunities. And all of a sudden the journey just stops there. It's like, okay, you're a buyer lead. Let's focus on buying and nothing else.
It's so that's just crazy to me that
It's wild,
that we're
right?
buying and selling home, or helping people buy and sell homes, but we're not taking their address. Welcome to Powerhouse, where we interview the biggest names in housing and ask them about their strategy for growth. I'm Diego Sanchez, president of HousingWire, and my guest today is a special one. It's Ryan Young, CEO and co-founder of Fello. Ryan, it's so great to have you on the show.
It is an absolute honor. I'm super excited to spend some time with you.
Yeah, I feel like we both have had our caffeine before this conversation, so it should be a
And
really,
during
really good one. Oh, you're in the middle of it. That's awesome.
the 4 o'clock cup.
So, just as an introduction for this audience, you lead and you've led one of the top performing real estate teams in the country,
Yep.
and I think that gives you a unique vantage point on some of the challenges that are facing real estate agents today. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I have a unique background. Maybe not that unique because I feel like every real estate agent never aspired to be a real estate agent when they grew up. But I was a professional chef. I've cooked all over the country. In 2009, I kind of had a quarter life crisis after being in the restaurant industry for about a decade. And I called my folks who lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and I said, Mom, Dad, what do you think about me coming back home and joining you and selling real estate? They were selling real estate as a team, the two of them. And I was 26 years old, and they said, 2009, that's the perfect time to get your real estate license. Come on home, son. And I learned the hard way really quickly that it was kind of a rough time, rough market. But one of the things that I learned in the restaurant industry was that work ethic. I just outworked everyone when I got into the real estate industry. And then very quickly, we started to scale a team and push through this really tough market. And before you know it, we had a team by maybe 2015, 2016 of 25, 30 people. Grew to the number one real estate team in the state of Ohio, large team. And it's one of those things that um, it's been a really fun run on the real estate side. And then ultimately transitioning, while I still own the young team, transitioning to building software where the young team was kind of our core customer at first and solving a pain point for us, all of a sudden realized this opportunity within building Fellow and the software and kind of the transition into that. But it is really fun to do both simultaneously, still having the relationship with the young team and being kind of like the laboratory where we build a lot of the things that we're doing within Fellow. So it's been this really fun journey over the past 15 years of like scaling and building the real estate team, transitioning into the software side of things while still doing real estate. And now ultimately to where we've migrated into now.
So, what have you built? What have you built
Yeah.
at Fello?
So one of the challenges that I had as a real estate company was just, I would say, building a moat around our database. And we built this database on the young team through lead acquisition. And so we were acquiring leads through third-party sources, and we'd convert a very low percentage of them. And then the ones that we didn't convert, essentially, we would just throw in our CRM and they would go to die, right? And ultimately, it creates a lot of constraint on margin, profit margin, when you're relying on new lead acquisition and third party lead sources month over month or year over year in order to scale your business. And so, we built Fellow with the concept of how do we actually help agents and now also loan officers actually monetize their database, get more out of their database, create a moat around their database, make their database more defensible, and actually look at their database as an asset versus a liability. And so, we built this incredible software platform that's all AI driven that basically ingests someone's CRM data or contacts and then enriches it with a bunch of vertical specific data. And then it starts marketing automation plans basically off of those very granular data points. And it's been unbelievable to see over the past 3 years since we launched this thing, the scale and magnitude of what it's become. And once again, it's it's really powerful because I actually have a real estate company that is a user of the product to actually be in real time building products that are solving pain points for another company that I have where I'm still in the trenches. And so it's just it's an interesting vantage point, as you said, you know.
It's really interesting. So do those automations that get spun up as you ingest a database, are those flagging opportunities for the real estate agent?
Real estate agent and loan officer. And so one of the things that I find is really interesting is, and we'll talk a little bit more about how AI is ultimately touching both industries and how the world is changing. But one of the things that I find is really interesting for both in the mortgage industry and real estate industry is databases are essentially static tables of information. They're very one dimensional. You put in information and that information never changes. But in reality, let's just say you're a contact in my database and I have your first name, your last name, a phone number, and an email address. And less than 20% of our customers have an address attached to a contact when they bring them over to us. And you never change in my database. Your contact information, unless I manually change it, always stays Diego Sanchez at 123 Main Street. Here's your phone number. Here's your email. But in reality, our database every day is moving, right? We are helping people buy and sell and home ownership and moving them around, but yet our database is static. And so what happens to your database when you have Diego who just sold his house and moved to a new house, but I've had you in my database as the same person for the past 7 years. So it's like, how do we actually create essentially this scrubbing approach or this dynamic approach to database? And so it's essentially taking you and identifying where you live. And if you sell that home or you list that home, or if you get a mortgage on that home or a HELOC on that home, or you refi that home, and it's constantly dynamically updating you essentially so that the messaging and the marketing that I'm sending to you is relevant to where you are now, not to when I put you in my database 3 years ago, 10 years ago, et cetera.
Yeah, and it sort of seems obvious when you talk about it because you are in the profession of moving people out of homes and into new homes, and yet the database is staying stagnant. So sometimes the most obvious things like are great businesses.
Well, and here's the funny thing, and once again, how this translates to me being a user. It all started when my real estate company, before we would actually set an appointment for an agent, they had to actually go into this software that we had that was basically a software that basically identified if the lead or the prospect had any criminal offenses. And from a safety standpoint, I wanted to make sure that my agents weren't
Hmm,
actually showing homes to
sure.
people that had some sort of criminal record, right? It's partially liability. And it was also one of those things that I was like, for our own safety, you're taking some stranger into a house. I think it's responsible for us to just do a quick background check essentially and make sure that like there's no priors that are like significant. So what's interesting is we had this as a process. And yet every time we'd go in there, we would just go in and check in and say, this buyer lead is clean, no priors, let's go show them a house. But all of a sudden I kept looking, and every time we were doing it, there was an address, their home address sitting right above it. And we would never take that address and actually go and put it in the CRM. And so I'm sitting there like, guys, we're buying all these buyer leads. We're showing all these buyers houses, but look at how many of them actually have an address that we could go to the county record and identify that they actually own. Why are we just approaching them as a buyer when they're also a homeowner? And so we were doing this entire manual process. And then that was kind of the concept of what if we can just take a database in real time and dynamically enrich with data to identify, are they the homeowner? Do they still live at that address? Did they move? Do they have a mortgage? So it was kind of this concept of taking something that my team was doing manually and once again, kind of like applying essentially productizing and automation around it to actually make us very efficient. And it's just completely changed the profit dynamics of our team.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So you built this platform for your own real estate
For
team,
sure.
and then for more people in real estate as you expanded the technology business. But I've heard you now say loan officer a couple of times, so it sounds
Yeah.
like you're getting pulled into mortgage as well.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting. This was never the intention. I'm a real estate guy, right? Uh, you know, I'm very close with a lot of loan officers and a lot of mortgage leaders, just naturally being kind of a leader on the real estate side. But what's so interesting is that we work with so many of the top teams and brokerages around the country that they started coming to us and saying, look, we also own a mortgage company, or I have a JV or a MSA with a loan officer, and they just keep hearing me talk about Fello. Can you bring this into the mortgage industry so our mortgage company can actually do what you're doing for our real estate team? We have the same problem with our mortgage database. We're under monetizing it. We're under leveraging it. Essentially, we're not getting as much out of it as we know we can. And Fellow has made such an impact on our real estate business. We feel like we're missing out because one of our companies has like this dynamic tool and the other company doesn't. And so at first it was just like, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm a real estate guy. And finally, after you have hundreds of people coming to you and it's like the writing's on the wall of saying, wait, is there the same problem in the mortgage industry as there is in the real estate industry? And then I started having conversations with a lot of my relationships and, loan officers who are friends and kind of asking them what their process looks like and how the way they look at their database and the way they market to their database. And I just realized that this is not just a real estate problem. It's a real estate and mortgage problem. And we were so excited that we just launched it.
It completely makes sense to me. HousingWire, we sort of have taken the opposite journey where we were a mortgage media company that saw that 35% of our audience were real estate professionals. And so we realized that we needed to push into real estate. And really, it's so interconnected, and it gets more interconnected all the time. And to your point, there are real estate brokerages that open up mortgage companies and vice versa. So it's all coming together.
It's so synergistic. And it's one of those things that there's hundreds, thousands of vertically integrated companies that it's like, okay, we're touching the customer through this entry point of them coming in through a buyer lead or through a mortgage application or a pre-approval application. And it's one of those things that it's like, we can help essentially service the customer journey through all these different touch points. And it's one of those things that it's like, we work with now a lot of loan officers that essentially aren't in the real estate industry because they've started to see other other loan officers, other mortgage companies essentially starting to use us and hearing about us. But it's been really special and it's been really fun for me because the real estate I know so intimately. It's like I've been in the trenches for the past 15 years. The mortgage side has been, I feel like I'm like a kid again. I'm like in school, I'm learning, I'm like obsessed with the consumer journey and the different product offerings and the differentiations between, different mortgage brands and brokers versus IMBs versus credit unions and all these different, it's like all these things we're going really deep in. And it's a totally different sales motion and it's a different customer profile. And it's like, and I've become obsessed with it now, which is a lot of fun, especially I know, we only launched Fellow less than 3 years ago, and which is still kind of in the honeymoon phase, but it's fun to be like, not necessarily reinvigorated, but so infatuated with kind of like this new audience that we're really starting to go deep in. And it's clicking very quickly.
Well, you're refreshing your entrepreneurial journey, which is
For
really
sure.
cool. I love to hear that. All right, so we talked about how Fellow helps turn static databases into dynamic databases, living databases. Very interesting to to the real estate professional and to the mortgage professional. Both sales professionals have spheres that they want to grow
Yep.
and that they want to capitalize on. So tell me about some of the opportunities that come up for real estate agents and loan originators when you turn your database from static into dynamic.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest one is just the the lack of awareness around the home ownership in the database. I would say that's the number one. And I'll just give you an example. So Fellow is incubating about 50 million contacts on behalf of brands, top brands all over the country, 25,000 users. And of those 50 million contacts, when they first get synced into our platform, less than 20% of them have an address attached to them. And to me, that's like mind blowing, right? Like and what it shows us is that we're an industry that is built on buyer leads, mortgage application opportunities. It's and all of a sudden the journey just stops there. It's like, okay, you're a buyer lead. Let's focus on buying and nothing else.
It's so that's just crazy to me that
It's wild,
that we're
right?
buying and selling home, or we're helping people buy and sell homes, but we're not taking their address
We're
in the
not taking
majority of
their
cases.
address. And so, and we're a pretty large sample size, 50 million contacts that we're incubating, right? And so when they come into Fellow, less than 20% have addresses. And then ultimately, when we go through the enrichment process, that we identify like just under 60% of them are actually homeowners. And so, as you can imagine, it is such a missed opportunity when you look at a key data point of, does this prospect own a home? Yes or no, right? And we'll start there. Okay, great. Let's take them down let's just say roughly 60% of them do own a home. All right, now we can branch out to all these different data points of like, do they have a mortgage on that home? How many mortgages do they have on that home? How much equity do they have in that home? How long have they lived in that home? And it's like all these different data points that now you can really start to make very intelligent assumptions on the way you should market to that person based on whatever offerings you have on the mortgage side. Potentially it's a refi or it's a purchase as soon as they list that home, or maybe it's a HELOC or whatever the product is, right? Consolidation, cash out refi. On the real estate side, it's focusing on, okay, here's someone who's lived in their home for X amount of time. They've seen Y amount of appreciation, which means they've seen their equity grow. Maybe it's now the opportunity for them to cash out and sell and move up or move down based on how long they've been in that home. And so it's like, it's just really interesting that when you take all these different data points that are right now completely underutilized and under leveraged in both industries, you can all of a sudden start to become a lot more intentional from a sales and marketing motion of the way you actually get value out of them.
Tell me how you're incorporating AI into the Fellow product to make the real estate agent or the loan originator's life easier.
Yeah, I mean, AI is everything. And we are not only, it's touching every inch of our product, but also it's touching every inch of our internal organization operationally as well. We don't just push out AI features or buttons because we think they're cool. We believe so much in them. And it's like we're focusing on, how does AI actually change how we operate as a business as well? Not just building a product to say, you go use AI, and we're going to continue to work the way we've been working for the past, 25 years since, or 30 years, whatever it's been. But something that's really important is, from an AI perspective, is ultimately the natural language ability to navigate through a platform. And what I mean by that is, we build really complex technology, but leverage AI to make it very easy to use. And so I can just type into Fellow, ask AI basically, show me anyone who's been in their home for over 10 years that doesn't have a mortgage on their property, and that whose home is appreciated by more than 50%. And it literally just, I type it in, hit enter, and it literally just filters down all the people. And then, wait, only do it in this zip code for homes over $1 million. All right, great. Now type in, I want to launch a marketing campaign to them about this. So it's like leveraging the natural language component is become really, really important to us, because ultimately marketing automation and sales automation is hard technically. When you build something really complex, you need to ultimately make it very user friendly, and AI allows us to do that. The other thing that's super important is, I mentioned we're incubating about 50 million contacts. As you can imagine, when you have that type of visibility from a data perspective of what's happening from those 50 million contacts, who's engaging with what emails,
Hmm.
the different behaviors, the different data points, it all of a sudden allows us to create assumptions, leveraging intelligence on, or I should say insights on who's thinking of transacting, who you need to get a message in front of that's very high intent, who you need to increase the frequency of your message to. And so we automate all of this based off of our learnings, leveraging intelligence of saying, hey, we're seeing people that have been in their homes for over 6 years that refied back in 21, that have X amount of equity. And we're seeing this across a very large sample size, are starting to actually transact, whether it's whatever the product or transaction type is. So all of a sudden that recommends certain marketing campaigns based off of that cohort because we're leveraging all of this intelligence across more of a macro viewpoint. And it makes us really smart in how we're ultimately recommending who is most likely to transact. And it's incredible how it gets smarter and smarter every day, the more data that we feed it.
It's super interesting. So, one of the things that happens in real estate in particular is a realtor or a real estate agent gets to the end of their career and they've built up this database,
Yep.
and then what do you do with it?
Right.
Right? It's a powerful database. They've done a lot of business in that database. Um, but how can Fellow help real estate agents with knowledge transfer, with database transfer as those professionals approach retirement?
Yeah. I mean, I think both in the real estate and mortgage side, I think the database is the most under leveraged asset that is just there's so much value in it. And so for essentially people that are ultimately leaving the business, I think that is one asset that they can actually monetize on their way out. And so I do think you will start to see more transactions around, whether it's through some sort of there's all kinds of strategic economic models on ways for you to transition or sunset an agent, a loan officer's business out to someone, that's ultimately wants to ingest it. But what I think is interesting from a knowledge transfer standpoint is because we have the ability to enrich with all of this data, it all of a sudden changes the dynamic of the relationship with the customer. The customer or prospect within your database, it used to be really focused on what I would consider as irrelevant marketing. That is, don't forget to set your clock back, right? Here's a recipe on banana bread. Like nowadays, no one cares about that, right? Like that used to be really interesting 10 years. I live in Cleveland. Here's the Cleveland Browns schedule on a magnet that goes on your fridge. It's like nowadays, like that doesn't really you don't need that anymore, right? Now what you need to do is provide them really relevant information, and that from a knowledge transfer standpoint, I feel like that supersedes or trumps essentially ultimately all of the relational side of the transfer of the database. And so what's really important is it doesn't matter who's sending who a message, as long as it's really relevant, all of a sudden it'll be received well. If I can send someone from my brand that maybe doesn't have as much brand equity or within the relationship of the stakeholder, if I can send them something that is really important to them, that is an offer to them or something of value, all of a sudden it will be received really well.
That makes a ton of sense. So you just recently are pushing into mortgage, which is really exciting. You have a thriving business on the real estate side. What's next for Fellow in terms of your platform and the AI that you've integrated into your platform?
Yeah, so it's interesting. This is a huge announcement we just made in the last 30 days. So Fellow does an incredible job ingesting the database, enriching it with all this new information dynamically. It keeps doing that, and then automating and creating engagement with the database, right? We used to joke that, or I used to joke that basically when I talk to a prospect, I said it's a 50-50 relationship. I'm going to take your database, I'm going to provide you with all this data on it, I'm going to get you all this, I'm going to create all this engagement. That's my 50% of the way. I need you to meet me the other 50% by calling them, setting an appointment with them, and converting them and closing them. And everyone's like, yeah, yeah, of course. That's you make my database raise their hand. I'll call them. I'll close them. Well, what happened was I got them to raise their hand. And then all of a sudden loan officers, agents are like, well, I got busy. I didn't call them back. And it's like, but it's a 50-50 relationship. I make the engagement. You have to get them on the phone and ultimately close them for the opportunity. And they're like, well, I'm busy and it's spring market and da 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 da. So it's like, okay, we're creating all this engagement. We're showing all this insights and creating all this propensity of saying this person's going to transact. All you have to do is get them on the phone. And we still can't get our users to get them on the phone, and we can't control that. And we want to ultimately help them create more profit out of their database. So we've been going very deep in saying, what if we actually called them for them? And we're not going to call them by essentially standing up a call center. It's 2025. We're in the AI revolution, the AI boom. What if we had conversational AI or voice AI and SMS essentially reaching out to their database and actually setting appointments, doing live transfers, creating applications, doing all of this for them? So, what we're so excited about is in the second half of the year is introducing this voice AI component that says, we're going to take your database, whether it's cold, new, the entire thing. We're going to enrich it with all this really vertical specific data. We're going to start to create all this engagement and get it to bring it back to life, right? And get your database really engaged in your brand and excited and opening emails and clicking on dashboards. And then we're going to call essentially the people that are most engaged. And then we're going to actually transfer them over to you or set an appointment for you, whatever you'd prefer, right? And so we're building these like just wild human like voices and experiences and conversation. I literally, last week, it was like 10 o'clock. I'm laying in bed with like my phone on my chest, my wife laying next to me, and I'm talking to one of our voice AI, and I'm just having a conversation. And she's like, this is so weird that you're like sitting here just talking to it. And I'm like, but it's so real and it's so good. And it's like, I'm almost talking to like someone I enjoy having a conversation with. And, that's what we're really excited about, is going so deep in not only being able to create the engagement, but actually be able to start talking to the prospect, asking them great questions, discovering what their motivation is, and then ultimately bringing them warm or live over essentially to our users. So now it's a 75-25 relationship. Now I just need them to close them, and it's like, I think that's as far as I take it.
It's adding a lot of value, and I love the organic nature of the way that you're growing your business. The tech platform comes out of your real estate team and solving problems on your real estate team. The push into mortgage is very organic, and then you're creating all this opportunity, and now you're helping people warm up that opportunity. It all kind of makes sense and is very organic. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me today on Powerhouse. This has been a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, this has been awesome. And I'll just, one of the things I think is really important is um, it's our responsibility as being to be problem solvers, right? You guys at HousingWire are problem solvers. You're essentially distributing information that people want to know and want to learn and want to hear about, and which ultimately helps them solve problems. And it's my job building software to listen to our customers and users and identify what are the pain points. I'm also a user. And so it's like articulating what my pain points are currently and continuing to solve those problems and build great software around it. And I think as long as both of us continue to do that, we'll continue to ultimately have raving fans and continue to enjoy what we're building for a long time to come.
What a great mission statement. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Yeah, this has been a treat.